All right. So we have our first DefCore meeting of the Lighthouse cycle. We have the agenda up on screen, and we're starting to do our roll call. either type of roll works.
Oh, sorry. I like rolls. I'm hungry. I didn't eat lunch. I'm going to mute myself and eat my muffin. Otherwise, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So everybody, thank you for joining. Just to couch, the purpose of this meeting is to not dig into all these topics, but to frame out how we're going to dig into the topics over the coming cycle. Todd and I were talking when we kicked off that we've got a lot to do, a lot of work to do. We need to make sure it's prioritized, and we need to. Some of these things are going to just be long fuses, and so we need to make sure we light the fuses so that they wind down by the end of the cycle. And with that, I would review any questions, and I don't necessarily want to walk through the agenda point by point, but is there anything people want to add to it? Cool. All right. So without further ado, we started talking about some of the feedback we got from the summit. I'd be interested to have people either just post it in notes or kick off a conversation about where we stand with the community reaction to DefCore from the summit. Josh, you want to start?
And a lively debate ensued.
Yeah. I need my cricket sound.
I'll say something. I think the reaction was all over the place. I got a lot of positive reaction from analysts, actually, and I felt that was heartening. I think they thought that the effort was exactly what was needed, and so I thought that went well. I think there's other folks who are skeptical as to whether it can frankly be done and done well, and I got that type of reaction as well too. In general, it seemed to be a positive tone. I think folks are more waiting to see how it all works out and what the scores look like once people try to go and test themselves against it.
Hey, can you guys hear me right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, Sean.
Yep.
Oh, okay, that was weird. Before I was, when you guys were saying you were hearing crickets, I was talking. That was really strange.
Oh.
I guess I'm a cricket, but nobody could hear me. So this is Sean Roberts, that is. Yeah, the cricket. I was expecting somewhat of the response that Todd just talked about, somewhat skeptical and such, but I didn't really get any of that. I got a lot of positive feedback where people were really happy that we were working on this and really agreed. Maybe it was due to Troy's evangelism up on stage. I mean, I know I almost came to tears, but for whatever combination of great reasons, the people, I probably talked to 15 people about it, various points over the week, and every single one of them, that's not including the people on the call, that is, it was pretty positive. They were happy we're doing it and were really interested in hearing more about it. So.
Yeah. Did anyone have any determinedly negative feedback?
I only had 2 people that were skeptical. All the rest were positive. I should have said it that way.
Oh, cool.
Were they skeptical or negative? I actually want to. Okay.
Skeptical. Yeah.
Didn't think we were doing the wrong thing. They just weren't sure. They wanted more information.
Not even information. It was they wanted to see what the results really look like.
Okay.
Before they, would buy in that it was going to be supported and well used by the vendors.
So their skepticism was whether or not there'd be pushback from the vendors once their baby got thrown out with the bathwater kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Or their baby was ugly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if we can, that seems to be something that we've been consistently concerned about of how we properly communicate that this is not a beauty contest but interoperability. So I guess that just probably as things go farther along, we just need to make sure that we take that in mind.
Right. I felt that the interop message was understood. That people, in discussing it, were like, "Oh, okay, I see how this gets to interop." It didn't. I was worried they'd feel like this was far away from interop, and it didn't seem like I had that trouble explaining it.
Yeah, no, I think it was more that they feel that there's going to be some very large fight at the board eventually because people's babies will, get sliced off. That was the skepticism that I heard. And therefore, could we truly come up with a definition that people would live with?
Anybody else?
I didn't really get any feedback from there, but on the last comment, it's kind of interesting. Things that get left out are, can be included in the distros, and so it doesn't seem like that would be a horrible thing.
No, I don't think so either, that it really would be, but, the people are looking at it from their perspective of if it's something that supports, a vendor's unique thing and it's suddenly left out of the distribution, it might make it look like that attribute, whatever it was that was in there, is certainly less desirable, and therefore they shouldn't pay attention to it. It hurts their marketing more than anything.
I see that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to see a different stance on some of the projects that are not that don't have core capabilities. But I think that there will be an impact around that. I didn't see a lot of people discussing that.
That actually brings up a point that I assumed I understood, but maybe I didn't understand it as well as I thought I did. That we're not, by us calling something a core or a capability or designated code section doesn't determine. I mean, let me just go back to capabilities. If something's considered to be a capability and thus can carry the mark if it supports these can support these tests or pass these tests, that doesn't mean that that's the base amount of code that's going to be distributed. That just means that that's the base amount of code that needs to be distributed to support that functionality in order to carry the mark. So there's going to be all kinds of the rest of the projects, the integrated projects as a whole, will be part of the well, that doesn't even.
Integrated is really a release management statement.
Yeah,
not a product statement, right?
So we need to make sure, and that brings up a point that I think may be confusing some people. In fact, I just stumbled trying to speak my mind. That the difference between being able to pass the tests for capabilities, thus being able to carry the mark, and the project release cycle and the code that gets released as part of that cycle are, they're similar, but they're not the same. So, for somebody who's not really intimately familiar with how things work, I could see that could get confusing to people because I could just see how that could be confusing. So we probably should explain that in some kind of way.
Sorry, Sean.
Go ahead.
That's part of the reason why I think that we are ultimately going to have to deal with the programs versus projects question. So the reason why I kept putting that on the agenda in the last cycle is to address exactly that question of, well, it's integrated.
Rob, can I make it an even more general question. I spent a lot of time at the summit talking to John Dickinson about Swift and how Swift fit in with DefCore and where his thinking was on that. And what I really ran into is that what the developers and PTLs think their projects are and are for does not match what the users think they are and are for. Mm. And this is particularly pointed in the Swift world, where his opinion of what Swift is and why it should be part of every OpenStack marked product doesn't have much to do with the way the rest of the OpenStack community consumes or interacts with Swift. And I think this sort of general question of what do the users think they're getting versus what do the devs think they're building, we have called this programs versus projects, and we've talked about it as like the simple case is just what's quote unquote in this integrated release is not what's guaranteed to be in products based on the mark for that release. That's just a timing slip. That's not the sort of cognitive leap of what that project is actually even good for. And I agree that if we get too far down that road, we're solving the sort of central question of what is OpenStack again. But I think we have to do it. I think we have to do it like we were trying to in the last cycle, out of band with the sort of getting the scorecard mechanism attached to the trademark.
Right. And this is, we managed to slip that out of this cycle. I think there's an open question if we need to deal with it in this cycle. So let me do this. That's actually a new topic. If it's all right, I'm gonna call it domains. I know you don't like that word that much.
Hate the term. Hate it. But sure, go ahead.
Yeah, that's overloaded.
I've been looking for a better term than this, but
product management.
That's a whole different concept, isn't it?
Product management, I think, or province. Province is regional, and I kind of like it as a sort of a simple descriptor. But province is what Rocky said.
And
I said
Provence,
product management at the same time.
Oh, how do I spell province?
With an I, not an E.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
You are clearly not Canadian enough.
I spent a lot of time in Louisiana. We could call it a parish.
I like that.
Yeah, little churches.
Region?
I actually had liked region, but I think region sounds different. I mean, we're talking about compute, networking, storage, and that's why domains to me was working better than other things, but I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, I have to admit I don't like domain either.
That's fine. It's the best of the worst as far as I've found. But I actually really like programs, and we just can't use it. So
the reason I was suggesting product management is because I was trying to deliberately attach this conversation to the board discussions we had about whether or not it was appropriate for the foundation staff to play a role in product management or project management, one or the other. And having thought about it a lot since the summit, I really do think it would be a good idea. And I think expressions from the foundation staff of what the products are, what the provinces are, separate from the dev community's internal perception of the projects, might help, certainly with user confusion.
Right, and allow us to get a consistent message out to everybody that we're lacking.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so let's put it under product management. I think the question is not to try and resolve it today, but is this something we take on this cycle? And maybe just love it. And maybe it's just coming up with a name for what these things are is enough to get started. But my sense is we're going to have to deal with this. So this is a cycle theme. If you want to do it like that. And I want to jump back to just make sure we close the community summit with a resolution that we have enough feedback. There's no reason to slow down, and I think that should be a committee resolution effectively out of this meeting. Yes, we think we're on the right track. Keep moving forward. Is that generally acclaimed? Any concerns about that statement?
I like that. I would make it even stronger.
Okay.
I mean, I specifically queried people to ask if they thought if we were missing anything. Not so much did they like what we were doing, but did they think there was a place where it wasn't going to be enough or where there was a gap? And I brought up specifically, we're not quite sure yet what to do about Swift vis-a-vis designated sections. We believe this is the last hard part of this first release, and then we know that we have questions around the rollout timeline and deprecation and the future of other marks. So we know we have these sort of 2 or 3 issues. Is there anything else? And I got really clear feedback that people thought we had things relatively covered, that they didn't have other issues in mind.
Yeah, deprecation was a concern, though. I heard that a couple of times as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Deprecation and or the ability to sort of version. Deprivation is also good.
Okay, designated sections on Swift specifically. Thank you. All right, so what we're saying is there's actually a separate resolution. So compatible mark is actually, you're right, that's something we're tracking as a item up in the agenda, so from the board. Can we call this API compatible, Mark? Just as a
yes,
yes,
definitely.
The foundation
as opposed
staff
to
studied this
programmatically compatible, yeah.
We're going to end up having to come up with a word besides compatible for that, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we want to use that word. I don't think we should defining
API parity mark, maybe. I don't know what it is, but I think we're going to have to stay away from the word compatible for things that pass the test but don't use OpenStack code. That'll work. I'm happy with that.
As a placeholder, it is what it actually is.
Yeah.
Re-implementation. Very nice.
Okay, so anybody object to the resolutions as spoken? I'll read them out just to make sure if you're not following on the screen. We're resolving that we're on the right track and we're going to keep going at current speed. And then that while we have some issues, so we've noted them, and we think those are the only gaps. Cool. All right. That lets us keep moving forward. So we added this cycle theme. Let's talk about future meetings at the end. Okay, working with the TCs to complete the Havana scorecard. That's just a status item. I think we need to start working in parallel on finishing the Havana scorecard and updating for ICES.
Agreed.
So there's 2 items. Sorry, Rocky, go ahead.
I was just agreeing with I guess it was Josh, I think.
It's usually me, yeah.
Yeah, we've got to start on iPad.
Okay, hold on. One thing at a time. I agree with you, but I think the TCs. I was on the TC agenda. The TC's agreed to resolve the .5s and work with the PTLs to get the remaining items scored for Havana before OSCON. Actually, like July 4th was the deadline we agreed with. So actually, I should put this in here.
Yeah, I think it was in the note.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do want to put deadlines on these things.
Yeah.
So we can understand which meetings have to take place, what times.
And I don't know if Troy's on, but we probably need to review the capabilities.
Yeah, I just put that. We got a bunch of feedback from John Dickinson specifically saying that he thought the capabilities groupings for Swift were confusing. The challenge is all of the capabilities he suggested don't have Tempest tests. They have a whole separate test suite in Swift itself. And so his request was either can we use this other test suite as well, or do we need them to port all of those tests to Tempest? And if so, what's the timeline for that? So it may be that we're really only going to end up scoring a lot of Swift capabilities in Icehouse or Juno. Because, the determination of whether or not we can use a second test suite.
So how big is the second test suite, and how much time would we estimate it to take to port it over?
I didn't get a good sense of that from John. I think it would really be, can we scare up volunteers in the Swift community to do the work? Because I don't have the sense that anyone else in the OpenStack ecosystem has enough understandings of Swift's internals to do it.
Yeah, this actually goes back to highlighting exactly what the dilemma is. Right, Swift is not entirely following the same ecosystem as the rest of the project.
Yep.
Well, the ecosystem formed after Swift, and I think that would be, John's argument is they had those tests before we had Tempest, which is a decent argument.
True enough. That is true.
So does it fall to the Swift team to do this work? And to either figure out how to make Teacup or you got to stop saying that probably.
Do a core version of Teacup, a Swift version of Teacup, or a Swift
version or some mechanism to run their existing tests or to port over their tests. Is that going to become the Swift team's responsibility rather than the Tempest team?
I think it is. I think the Swift team gets to talk to the Refstack team about it and say, hey, is it easier for us to help you make Refstack run this other test suite as well? And is that an unnecessary burden on the users, or do we need to port these tests? And if so, we'll go and work with it. They should go work with Tempest to do it. But I think the ask is, DefCore can't get in the middle of helping people create tests or migrate tests or whatever. We can just say the only thing we can do is rely on this one tool. Otherwise, we'll go crazy. If we do it for Swift, we have to do it for everyone.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
FYI, there's already a conversation open between some of the Swift folks and the Tempest folks about those, how to get those Swift tests into Tempest.
Yeah, I got the sense that the conversation had started from John, but I wasn't sure how urgent it was, if it was sort of a nice to have or a must to have.
I think it's just exploratory at the moment, but they're actually trying to work through the logistics.
Makes sense.
All right. Let's see. So these are technical community items. And actually, can I put the capabilities groupings up into this?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Well, so these are technical items, but they're not automatically on the TC, right?
No, right. They're not right. I'm calling those out.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool.
But what we're going to need is, and unfortunately, the timing is such that we're not going to get Michael on this, or Anne. I didn't see Anne. Maybe she's here. But we'll have to continue to work with the TC to drive these priorities. What I was going to suggest is that we resolve out of this meeting that we've got to have designated sections resolved by 7-4 or we need to just default it to it's 0. And I would maybe
For Havana.
For Havana, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, and this is in the Havana section, but it's useful for doing that. But I think Juneau's coming down so fast that there's really not much leeway, right? But I think I'm fine to do it for Havana. Talk about and we'll get the implications. Are people cool with taking this stance? Havana's advisory anyway. But
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
go ahead.
Around this.
There's Todd.
Oh, I'm just thinking I was on mute. But around this, over time, are we thinking that we're going to go more and more with test and less with designated sections? And if so, this is sort of going backwards from that.
My goal is to act as a driver to say figure out the designated sections, or we'll rely on the tests alone. Because what I'm worried about doing is, and this is a trick, right? The TC's definition actually says things are designated by default. I'm worried in the case with Swift or Keystone or something like that we cause tricky problems if we make the code 100% designated. Maybe that's okay.
I'm not sure we'd want to do that, and the only reason is that once we go have something in core, we want to keep it there, right? And so if we just say everything by default, then
you're right. That's this is a really all right. So what I'm going to suggest is we're going to need to have another meeting about this topic.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And I think that needs to have a good number of board members there.
And the TC.
Yeah.
And don't we think that somebody who's ultimately responsible for the mark should probably be involved in this discussion early on as well? It'd be good to have their input. Guys?
Okay. Yes, I think that's right, Sean.
Okay. Didn't know if you guys could hear me again or not.
No, so this is definitely a future item, right? Designated sections impact. I'm not going to try and build up the agenda right now. I'll pull it from here after the fact. All right, yeah, this is
I'm still happy with this sort of. So we're scrapping that preliminary resolution, though, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Which one is that?
Originally, I'd written that we would, the one you objected to.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, but this has to be an ASAP. Actually, instead of it's resolved, I'll write it as ASAP action. That means I'll try and pull something together for next week. Maybe not next week, early the week after. So before the face-to-face that I've tentatively set up, we'll try and have a prep meeting to hit some of these items so we can have a broader audience. The other item in here is that I think I heard pretty clearly from people was that the capabilities matrix is too hard to understand.
What, the 12 criteria applied to the 75 capabilities?
Yeah, the matrix. It's just not intuitive for people to know what's going on with the matrix.
Oh, well, all they want is the actual output, the scorecard output from Refstack that says these are required and these aren't. We'll do that afterwards.
Yeah, so it's, how you make the sausage versus the sausage, right?
Well, we had that spreadsheet that we put up with all the color coding and stuff like that, and the people were like, I can't read that.
Yeah, but that's totally fine. That's if the people that can't handle like spending the 5 minutes to parse that out are probably not going to have that level of granular feedback.
Okay.
I mean, that's why I put an unresolved item there to say, hey, maybe we should have, diffing tools, because what people are going to care about once the baseline is done is what's changing in each release, which I think we should be able to highlight for them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, formatting items, gotcha.
Right. I do think this needs to be cleaned up. And one of the things that came up in the TC review was they're like, we need to have an easy way to read that report so that they can score it. And I don't think it would take that much, but it'd be nice to have somebody go and say, all right, I'm going to create a clean version of that spreadsheet with less unneeded information, and it could just ideally it would just come out.
What I feel,
XML.
Rob, I just feel like it needs an executive summary. That's all. It just needs like 2 or 3 paragraphs of prose that says, look, roughly what happened is these ones look like they're in, and these ones are on the bubble, and these ones are out, and here's the histogram story. I mean, it's what we end up saying every time we talk about it and explain it. My concern is just if I write that down or you write it down, you could probably do it. Everything I say these days, somebody takes issue to. So when it's just numbers.
I disagree with that. Not everything.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Such a layup.
So much.
I couldn't
that was
resist.
totally a layup. I sort of feel like even if we write it, we need it ascribed to Tom Fifield, because nobody ever gets offended by what that man says. He's so likable.
I would actually like to see these items done by not Rob or Josh.
Yes, like the executive summary statement of the scorecard, I think, should be done by somebody else, for sure.
Yeah, so I can go take that one back to Andrew Haley and Catherine if you want, get them working on that, because that's the kind of work that they do internally as well when they do these kinds of analysis, is roll them back up. So if you want, I'll take that one.
Each of the categories, the columns, need a more verbose definition, because every time I run across atomic, I get confused because of my understanding and the loadedness of atomic for me.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So
what I'd love to see us do is actually create formatted web pages. They pull in the JSON, so it's not raw data. I think it's very doable to take this on. We just need that done.
So that's why I was talking about Swagger, but I wanted to sort of defer that as a separate conversation. Swagger is probably exactly the tool we should be using, because it's just you start from JSON and then it generates nicely interactive HTML pages and everything else. So, something like that. I agree. We need the formatting and the sort of user-friendly display, but I think we can have a technical conversation on like 2 or 3 choices.
Right. So these are actually why don't we do this? This is Refstack work.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and so we have a Refstack day booked for the 11th, right? Or tentatively penciled in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, yeah, good.
So, and I think we actually have specs. I have specs to write. So let me do it like this. This is a 0. And then
one thing Anne mentioned at the summit was a possibility of getting a contract writer for Refstack. She thinks it's important that we have a clear doc for that. So you might want to talk with her offline about that.
Yeah, I think we should definitely make sure that the next meeting is booked when she can attend.
Yeah. Well, and this is some of the stuff we can advance offline. So these items are not blocked on us meeting. I don't think, and as long as we agree that we want to move forward on this.
Yep.
Then we'll do it. We don't have to we can do status updates about it, and that's it. Is that cool? And
Yeah.
then what
Yes.
I can do is since we're doing these specs, I can copy the DefCore on the specs when they come up, so people can comment on them, like I did for the capabilities, and that worked out really nicely. Cool. So we've got some technical items to keep driving forward. We've got some formatting items that we know how we have a place to resolve. That looks good. Support for non-Tempest items is going to be in this future. I'm going to move this up, if that's all right, into this action thing. Cool. What's next? Any other topics on that?
I was just calling that a separate resolution, the resolution of that question. There was a request from the PTL of would we support it, and I think our answer is if you want to contribute the code in Refstack that makes it easy to run other test suites, then awesome, but it's scope creep for us that we can't handle right now. Whee!
Oops. I hit insert. Okay. That's going to read run. Okay. Other items before we move off of Havana scorecard?
No.
Oh boy, next one's Icehouse and Juno.
So the work items, obviously, first one is what tests are new? Therefore, do we have new capabilities? It seems abusive to ask Troy to do that work again, but I'd love to anyway. Especially because he's not here. I love to abuse Troy in his absence.
Well,
no,
but we also have Catherine and the IBM team who I think have been doing this work. So
that's true too. Actually, so that
And and I think Catherine's very much happy to continue doing it. So let's ask Catherine. I'm happy to do that. She and I have talked quite a bit about this.
And then can we assume, let's maybe break 2 working group sessions for scoring them, I mean, in each bucket, one of which is the easy one. So a quick scan of things that were already in core to make sure that they haven't fallen out, but we shouldn't have to dramatically rescore them. And then probably the most focus on the things that were on the bubble, and then the last pass on the stuff that was clearly not in core the first time around to see if things have dramatically changed. Does that make sense?
that makes perfect sense. I think scoring hopefully it'll be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, should be fast. It might be worth just having a quick look at the Havana one first to see which projects have capabilities that were on the bubble, so that we can see if we can have PTLs or TC members attend the scoring and kind of rep for their projects and be like, hey, these things have lots more tests now, and the documentation is better now, and here are all the people using it. That'll take a little bit of, that's sort of the pre-working meeting action would be to figure out who needs to be there. Right.
So yeah, what I was be interesting to see if we can do it as a scheduled workshop. So far, the TC's been reluctant to do a lot of face-to-face meetings, but I think we just need to ask them how they want to handle it. Why don't we toss it, put it on the agenda, and ask them how they want to do it.
Okay.
Isn't it nothing more than? I would think it's 2 things. Typically, the groups like to do things documented, and doing it face-to-face makes that harder. But also that the teams are really, really spread out. So getting more than just a couple of team members together is difficult at best.
Yeah, that was sort of why I was thinking about doing it in a couple of separate working groups.
Yeah, I think we can divide and conquer. I would rather since they have a specific process they want to do, and they might want to do it as reviews in Garrett, whatever, and that would, whatever, I'd like to get their feedback on how they want to take it on, and then we can debate back and forth if it makes sense. I think we did the hard ones, the hard iteration this time. I think the future iterations might be a lot easier, especially if we have something that formats it pretty well. Right, because you know what we could do? We could resolve that we're going to assume scores inherit, right?
Yes, exactly.
So I think if we say, look, here's the deal, we're going to assume that if it was Havana, this score, it moves straight into Icehouse with the same score, and then we could actually throw it through a Garrett review or something like that, and it would be pretty straightforward to go through and have people comment on individual. Shoot, we didn't capture this level of detail in the JSON file. So I think what we might need to do is add the scoring. We actually need to do that. This is going to come all the way up. I'm bringing this up to the Havana scorecard.
How would a Garrett review?
Did we not do that yet?
No, I chose not to put the individual scores in when I built the JSON. I left it very sparse.
We only need the collapsed score. We don't need the per criteria score, right?
Well, that's what I thought originally, but this conversation makes me think we need the per criteria score, because that would let us do a Garrett review where people could pull out an individual criteria, individual capability, and make comments about it.
Okay.
I hadn't thought about that use case before. And the other thing it lets people do is, assuming we get some formatting on it, then you could actually click on a row and see the detail breakdown. And it's probably useful information. That's something to sleep. That might be something to sleep on.
Yeah, it's a lot of detail. It's a lot of we're reinventing Excel in JSON, but it's okay.
But the question becomes, how do you actually collect the scoring information and repeat it? And Garrett provides us with a way to actually discuss individual criteria offline. So this comes back to this. So what we're saying is we're going to have to talk to the TC about how they want to do the scoring. Consequence of that might be that the individual scores have to go into a JSON file.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know another way to do it that fits with the patterns we've seen, but they might decide that the spreadsheet's fine.
Let's build an interactive web page with a data table. Oh wait, that's what a Google Doc is. Sorry.
But this one would be in Garrett. All right. I actually think this has been a really useful conversation from this perspective.
Not to fork this conversation, but what about using Storyboard?
If you think it can handle it,
So Refstack is going to test run using Storyboard, and we'll let you know how it goes.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking of discussing the actual capabilities. I mean, it's nothing more than user stories that equal features. It would seem to be appropriate for this kind of discussion. As far as actually feeding back in the test or the run results, I don't think it has a mechanism for that yet.
The run results
but that's not what we're talking about.
A different beast, yeah. This is a much more static thing. They could, yeah. I don't know enough about Storyboard to have a decision. Sean, if you want to help with this, that would be.
I can. Well, I was in on the conversation talking about storyboard with the Refstack team, Rocky, but and maybe Rocky could chime in. But I think for an actual project like Refstack, I think it's dangerous because it doesn't have the capability of right now of handling bugs. But it does have the capability of describing, I mean, it's come a long way in the last couple of months. It has the capability of describing user stories and features that would tie into those user stories and be able to have some kind of conversation about them. That seems to be pretty appropriate for this kind of discussion. What do you think, Rocky?
Well, that's an interesting question. David Lenwell is moving ahead and getting us into storyboard, and listening to the folks on infra, or reading the folks on infra, they seem to believe that a single task is equal to an issue is equal to a bug. And so by adding a new task into the story for the epic, you're putting the bug in place, the bug creation.
Okay.
So it would be an interesting experiment, but I think we need to get somebody from storyboard who knows more about it to tell us whether it's a useful way of going about it.
Yeah, it just sounds really painful what the ideas that you and Josh are batting around, Rob, of using Garrett. I don't doubt that it's possible, but it just sounds painful.
I agree. I don't want to invent something new either. So, I want to be clear about that. The reason I'm suggesting it is because that's how the TC seem to be operating on evaluating group decisions. I don't necessarily think that's the only thing to consider. I'm just proxying for the TC.
Possibility. I don't know if it's a big possibility or not, but Google Docs now has traceability for versioning, and it might be worth looking into that and just limiting management of that, so you comment on the Google Doc, and when people are in agreement, it gets tossed into the Google Doc. And then you've got your spreadsheet.
I think I'm okay with that process. I think that's pretty usable. I just want to make sure that we talk to the TCs and see what they're doing.
Agreed.
Agreed. All right. I was looking back at the agenda. One of the things that we were looking at as a trigger for when we would start this. It's possible that we need to talk about how we want to do it with TCs, but we're not ready to do the scoring until after the OSCON, after the board blesses the Havana. Do we want to set that as a trigger for this? When do we start doing the scorecards for ISS and Juno? People okay with starting after OSCON? Which is like 7:15, I think.
I think as long as we're doing the sort of review of new capabilities and new tests beforehand, I think it's okay to start scoring it after it's approved.
Okay. Start scoring. Okay. So what we're saying is capabilities. Right, and so we already have okay, so these are start immediately.
So this is Alan. I'm finally off my other call. So why do we need to wait? What's the barrier? Is there something we're expecting to happen at the board meeting?
So, yeah, what I was expecting is that we would present the Havana capabilities the core capabilities to the board for approval to sort of exercise that process at OSCON and have it have them say, yes, these are the advisory core capabilities. And then that score would then translate forward for Icehouse and then for Juno. And there's a whole bunch of work to get ready for that. So I think we don't want to jumpstart actually having the discussion about the Icehouse capabilities until we've done some of this other work. I actually don't think. I think that we'll be lucky to start it after the day after OSCON. If we actually can start that process, I think we should be excited about that timing, because it looks like there's a fair bit of work to do, even just to get ready for that event.
Do we have any? Do you think we'll be in a position we can actually have run the Havana tests before OSCON? So we'll have any feedback?
I've been optimistic on this before and wrong, but
I know.
So I think, do we have an agenda topic on this? Because it's a good question. Hold on.
So Catherine can run the test, not in any software that will become Refstack. That it's old stuff, but she's running the test against RDO right now, and tweaking the various configurations and stuff she needs to demonstrate that it either passes the test or fails for good reason. So we can have an example by OSCON of showing the test, but not in any package type of configuration. But she does have it. She can export it to spreadsheets and let people, and she has stuff that can do diffs and trending and things like that with the spreadsheet.
Is it a bandwidth question? Is it just a maturity of the setup question? I mean, I'm just wondering if we got other people to jump on that.
Oh my God!
Stop talking. The test. Okay, stop.
No, just like the only thing that is wrong with Refstack is that we have way too many volunteers. Adding more people to a late project will make it later.
Yes.
Like, that is why it is late, is because we added 50 people. So.
Okay.
Well, not 50.
No, I wasn't. Yeah. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. I was asking a Refstack question.
So
it is a lot of question.
We could just ask everyone to go and run Tempest on their own in whatever fashion they would like and self-certify in however they would like. I mean, DefCore is not blocked on Refstack. It was a nice idea to build a tool that we could all use, but we've gotten in our own way in that fashion.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to note. Actually, I want to try and keep to schedule. Let's parking lot that and plan it. We know we need another meeting next early the week after next, probably Tuesday. Actually, we'll set the time for the next meeting. Ideally, what I would. So let's do that in a minute.
I would say that no promises, nothing but an example of test output from the designated test. And it's only the output, and it's only because it's generated already, but nothing to do with Refstack. It's just test output.
Right. So hold on. What I'm going to suggest is that we make Refstack update and a Lighthouse 2 item, and we also need to make the legal affairs. So the bylaws change. Sorry. Is an item. So we need to talk about the bylaws change. What I would suggest is that we're going to end up needing a bylaws meeting before, so we have to have a meeting before. To do the plain English version of the change. So what we've talked about for the bylaws changes was that we're going to do a plain English. This is what we want to see the bylaws look like. and have the DefCore committee review the plain English. And I actually think that is a major work item for the face-to-face. Actually, why don't we do that? I think that's a work item for the face-to-face meeting, assuming that we can get the right people in the room for that.
Does that include the designated code discussion?
So we need to have the designated code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through these notes and build the right agenda. I'm just trying to make sure that we parking lot the things that we need. So let's do this. Before the face-to-face, we're going to write the plain English version of the changes. But very, very briefly, what we decided was to stop writing the rewriting the bylaws before we knew what we wanted, and write down what we wanted, and then make the bylaws changes for that, right?
Sounds good to me.
A non-legalese. Okay, because I think people are really struggling with the fact that it's in the bylaws document and we don't understand the intent. So I talked to Eileen about that a couple of weeks ago, and everybody seems to buy into that approach. Okay, so this is okay. We talked about this, and Alan, we can go into more detail about why the trigger is OSCON.
Well, I was just trying. Yeah. We can save that for next time.
And I'm just going to punt this topic altogether. We can punt this. I don't think it's urgent. That's all right. Because I really want to try and respect people's time since it's last day before a holiday. Other items to and then is it the 12th now, Thursday? And I'm assuming we're talking about 4 hour, maybe longer.
Thursday the 12th. I'm looking at 11 to 3 or 11 to 4 is about the best I could do. I have to be on a plane at 6. So 11 to 3 is probably the best 4 hour chunk for me, including lunch. And then something similar on the 11th for Refstack. But I will leave that up to...
This is June, right?
Yes.
And meeting in, I know I saw an email on this, but remind me, San Francisco or just Bay Area?
Bay Area, TBD. We can do the Piston office. We have lots of room now. Well, relatively speaking.
Yeah, and we could do it down in Santa Clara, and or we could pick a coffee house somewhere. Or
where?
Yeah.
Actually,
coffee house doesn't sound good.
Great.
My preference is just not somewhere too far to get back to the airport from. That's so anywhere peninsula, middle of the peninsula is fine with me.
Yeah, maybe even South City.
Sure.
I think there was something I was going to try and do Menlo Park. So south is good.
Did you say Menlo? Menlo Park?
Menlo Park.
San Mateo and Redwood City are also good places to consider.
Just because centrally located, or?
Centrally located, easy access from the train, lots of restaurants and coffee shops and other stuff, walkable, very short walk from the train.
Yeah,
let's take this off. Let's take this offline and figure this out non-interactively, because I think I'd like to have a volunteer for an actual space.
My preference is not coffee house, so I'd rather have an office, quiet space.
Well, Huawei can certainly volunteer space.
So.
And Wi-Fi.
Okay. Well, we'll take it on the mailing list.
Okay. And tentatively, so can we pick a tentative date for next meeting? Or I can do it on the list if we need. I was looking at the 3rd in the morning.
How early?
The earlier we do it, the easier it is for Michael to join us.
Mr. Still. I could do
the other
7
option is later.
PDT.
There's the TC meeting. The TC meeting ends at 2 o'clock your time, so we could also do it right after the TC meeting, and that actually might be useful. So the other option is 2 o'clock Pacific.
Well, Still is he's +8 to PDT, right? Or is it more? Or is it
right.
+18?
My thinking is
Minus
he's
8.
got to be on the TC meeting either way. So actually putting it in the morning on Tuesday is probably worse for him than putting it in the afternoon on Tuesday, because he's going to be up for the TC meeting.
The project meeting's right afterwards. Doesn't he attend that as well?
Oh, he probably does.
So it'd have to be 3 PDT. And actually, that's the containers team meeting too. So he's probably in that as well.
So we can move it to 1.
How about?
Or we could do Monday. You want to do it Monday or the 2nd? Do morning Monday the 2nd.
Second
Well, why
better
don't you
for
just
me.
pick the 2 days and then get with Michael and have him do the final?
All right, that's fine. I think Michael's important to include. So why don't we do this? Why don't we target? I guess that would be 8 a.m. on the 2nd or 4th, and we'll talk with Michael and see.
Sounds like a plan.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent, everyone. Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all taking your time on Friday afternoon. Keep this all going.
Thanks, Rob.
It's a lot of work, but I'm excited.
Cheers.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Adios, amigos.